Being a Green Lantern, an intergalactic lawman with an all-powerful ring, means shining a light of hope in a dark universe. For decades, the greatest symbol of that hope was Hal Jordan, a human fighter pilot chosen to become a Green Lantern because of his ability to overcome great fear. Hal was introduced in 1959 at the start of the Silver Age of comics, and in the decades that followed, other characters would assume the mantle of Green Lantern alongside him, as the comics slowly became an epic space saga. Through it all, Hal Jordan would remain at its center, the fearless, classic hero that embodied everything Green Lantern stood for. Then came Emerald Twilight. This controversial, brutal, landscape-altering story published in 1994 across Green Lantern Volume 3, issues 48 through 50, would see Hal Jordan fall. Alongside him, the rest of the Green Lantern Corps would be destroyed, and numerous longtime supporting characters would die. At its end, Jordan became Parallax, an unhinged villain with the power to threaten the entire DC universe. And from the ashes would rise a new Green Lantern, and a completely new direction for one of DC Comics' longest-standing heroes. In the span of just a few months, the legacy of Green Lantern was changed forever. But what's most surprising about this massive, extremely controversial overhaul of Green Lantern is just how sudden this new direction was behind the scenes at DC Comics. After his introduction as the Silver Age Green Lantern, Hal Jordan starred in a variety of GL comics, each with his character as the consistent lead save for some temporary replacements, such as John Stewart or Guy Gardner. By 1990, Hal was the lead once again, starring in the ongoing Green Lantern Volume 3. Despite suddenly sporting white temples to show some signs of aging, Hal was largely the same character he had always been, and the series, written by Gerard Jones, would continue rebuilding the classic Green Lantern mythos for 4 years. But change was coming for all of DC Comics, and the life of Hal Jordan was no exception. That change started with the death of Superman, a massive event that saw the Man of Steel die in combat with the monster Doomsday in January of 1993. The moment took the world by storm, leading to news coverage, massive sales, and a new trend in comics: breaking heroes for sales. It wasn't long until Batman had his back broken by the villain Bane in July of the same year. Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, even Spider-Man all underwent monumental but temporary changes in the years to follow, shaking up their books in pursuit of renewed interest. Most often, these heroes were replaced by new characters in the title role. But most importantly, 4 new heroes laid claim to the identity of Superman in the ongoing Reign of the Superman story until one of them, the cyborg Superman, was revealed as a villain and destroyed Coast City, the home of Green Lantern since his introduction. That moment, which led to the instantaneous death of 7 million people, happened in Superman number 80 in August 1993. Outside the pages of Green Lantern. This is the moment when Hal Jordan and Green Lantern comics would change forever, but that change was originally meant to be much different. The immediate fallout of Coast City's destruction happens in Green Lantern number 46, with Hal arriving and defeating the villainous Mongol as the newly returned Superman stops the cyborg. It's a brutal, engaging fight that acts as a moment of catharsis for Hal, avenging the fallen and helping to save the world. At the end, Coast City is gone and Hal is shaken, but the hero remains. The next issue sees Green Arrow team up with the hero for a short adventure as Hal begins to move on from the loss of Coast City. But at the start of issue 48 and the beginning of the Emerald Twilight trilogy, Hal is once again distraught and mourning Coast City. Jones is out as author, Ron Mars has taken over, and editorial is promising that Green Lantern will never be the same. So what happened? The truth is that Green Lantern number 50 was always meant to bring massive change. Publisher Paul Levitt's senior group editors Mike Carlin, Dennis O'Neil, and Archie Goodwin, and Green Lantern editor Kevin Dooley dictated that the story had to move Jordan out of the lead role indefinitely and replaced with a new character. Sales were slumping and GL was losing popularity. A major shakeup needed to happen, so then writer Jones wrote a 3-issue arc to fulfill that edict. The loss of Coast City causes Jordan to leave Earth and dedicate himself fully to the Corps. However, a group of imposter guardians take over the Corps while Hal protects the true founders. Hal enters Oa's central power battery for greater power and fights the new guardians, only to learn that the death of his father when he was a child was not an accident, but was actually caused by the old guardians to eventually make him into the greatest Green Lantern. Hal protects the old Guardians for the sake of the universe and defeats the villain behind it all, Entropy, but leaves the core. Now, with newfound power from the battery and no longer needing a power ring, Hal becomes the Protector, and Earth is in need of a new Green Lantern. That's definitely not what happens in Emerald Twilight, but up until almost the last minute, this was what was going to happen. In fact, the changes happened so late that this was the solicited plot for these issues, making the true story of Emerald Twilight even more of a surprise. Gerard Jones' time on the Green Lantern title had been a rocky one, with the writer and Green Lantern editor Kevin Dooley rarely seeing eye to eye, and Dooley often rewriting stories. Compounding that tension was the rise of Image Comics, which had debuted in 1992 after being founded by some of the comics industry's hottest talent. Events like the death of Superman were a way for DC to regain the spotlight, but stories like Green Lantern were falling behind. While issue 50 was planned to clean the slate and set the table for a new Green Lantern, Carlin, O'Neill, and Goodwin rejected Jones's plans late in the game and brought in writer Ron Marz, still early in his career and getting attention on Marvel's Silver Surfer, to put an end to Jordan's story and usher in a brand new era of Green Lantern. Apparently, sales were sliding enough that something drastic was needed, said Marz. Having read what was originally written and drawn for issues number 48 through 50, I can say that those issues would have not stoked interest in the series, because those issues were more of the same. Kevin Dooley said he wanted me to take over GL because the book needed a fresh direction. I was excited because I always thought Hal was a pretty cool character, and I love that costume. And then the other shoe dropped. Kevin explained what was planned, essentially removing Hal from the book and replacing him with a GL that I would make up. Pretty serious stuff. I actually begged off and took about a week before I accepted it. I knew it was a great opportunity, a rare chance to really change the course of a book, but I also knew it would come with an immense amount of baggage. I obviously ended up jumping in with both feet though. Issue 48, subtitled The Past and kicking off Emerald Twilight, begins with Jordan distraught over the millions dead in Coast City. His grief soon turns to desperation, using his power ring to recreate the city and its residents. It's an idyllic vision of the West Coast metropolis, save for its all-green appearance. As Jordan speaks with his childhood girlfriend who had died in the blast and his parents, who had died decades before, we can see Hal's grasp on reality beginning to slip. Desperate for approval from his father and a way to undo terrible loss, the sudden dissolution of the recreated Coast City when his ring runs out of power becomes too much for the Green Lantern to handle. He's suddenly called back to Oa by the Guardians for using his ring for self-gain, causing Jordan to snap and set out to take power from the central battery to undo what has been lost, no matter the cost. "Oh, I'll come back to Oa all right, but you're not going to like me when I get there." When read in the context of the dozens of issues that preceded it, Emerald Twilight feels extremely abrupt. Of course, the massive behind-the-scenes restructuring explains Jordan's fall much better than any story analysis could. When I agreed to take the book, issues 48, 49, and 50 were all due, Marz revealed. The book was late, the planned issues had been pulled, and things had to get moving, right now. So I wrote my first 3 issues at the same time. That's why there were 3 different artists on them. I remember writing part of issue 48 between sets at a Peter Gabriel concert. I found a quiet place where I could steal a few minutes to write. The deadlines were that tight. Read together, the shifting artists, Bill Willingham on 48, Fred Haynes on 49, and Daryl Banks on 50, somewhat clash, but Marz writes a concise and hard-hitting tragedy. Issue 49, subtitled The Present, sees Jordan tearing through space and countless Green Lanterns sent by the Guardians to stop him. The former hero takes the rings of each defeated Green Lantern, growing his power, leaving the others for dead, and becoming an insane wrecking ball headed straight for Oa. To stop him, the Guardians release Sinestro from his prison within the central power battery. The issue ends with Jordan, intent on destroying the Guardians, facing off against the Green Lantern's greatest enemy. It's an inversion that quickly illustrates just how far the once great hero has fallen. "I would have loved to write E.T. over 6 issues, said Marz. I think that's about the length that would have been necessary to really make Hal's descent believable and tragic. So what we ended up doing was a bit rushed because of the circumstances, and I regret that. But if I'd had 6 issues, the events would have been generally the same. I just would have had more room for the character stuff. Sometimes you just have to play the cards you're dealt." Issue 50, The finale of Emerald Twilight, subtitled The Future, begins with Hal and Sinestro fighting to the death, and Jordan finally, brutally killing his nemesis by breaking his neck. But if readers were still able to excuse the former hero's actions, his murder of Kilowog, a longtime friend and stalwart Lantern, is the final straw. And Jordan knows it too. I just wanted to have my life again. You could have given me the power to make everything right, but you self-righteous gnomes couldn't even do that much. All you were capable of was turning your back on me. To tamper with what has been is the most grievous crime of all. Don't you think I know that? And haven't you realized I'm beyond caring? It's too late for that. Too late for me. Too late for you. There's no turning back. Now what's going to happen is going to happen. It has to. You can't stop it, and neither can I. In a last-ditch effort to stop him, the Guardians sacrifice themselves, destroying the battery and leaving only Ganthet. Jordan emerges from the central battery as Parallax, and Ganthet flees to find a new Guardian. Unlike the death of Superman or the breaking of Batman, Jordan himself was villainized to make way for a new lead. There was no easy way back for this character. I had a few pages of notes from editorial dictating the broad strokes of what needed to happen. Hal goes nuts, wipes out the core, kills Sinestro, and blows up the central battery and the Guardians, reflected Mars. The details were up to me. I decided to have Hal kill Kilowog on camera, because I felt we needed to feel the loss of a more known character to make this thing have some weight. From the ashes of the core would rise a single Lantern, Kyle Rayner. Briefly introduced in issue 48, Kyle is seen again at the end of 50 as Ganthet arrives on Earth and gives the young man the sole remaining Green Lantern power ring. It's a hasty decision and one made out of desperation. You shall have to do. Suddenly, there was only a single Green Lantern in the entire universe and a single Green Lantern comic, as the John Stewart-led Green Lantern mosaic came to an abrupt end, and Guy Gardner's Yellow Ring was destroyed by Jordan in his own comic during the Emerald Fallout storyline. The editorial team boldly laid out their decision for the readers in the letters pages of Green Lantern number 50. We needed a change. Let's face it, in all the years that Hal has been in existence, there has been little change, if any, to the character. Sure, he gained great temples with this second series, but that's as far as it went. Superficial. Cosmetic. Even Denny O'Neil, who told great stories with the character, admits it was hard to tell stories about the character. Hal was either too nice or a jerk, leaving no lasting impression, and that had to change. What we have done has undoubtedly angered a lot of you, and that's okay, because before this, nobody was talking about this book, or even cared about its central character to any great extent. That's changed. Readers were shocked. They were outraged. They sent hate mail and death threats and demanded a boycott of the title. They said that Green Lantern had been ruined. You know, typical comic book fan stuff. But the numbers proved otherwise. The now Kyle Rayner-led book rocketed to the top of the charts and even outsold Batman and Superman at times. Green Lantern was back on top with Rayner, but Jordan was at the very bottom. Unlike Jordan, who was chosen due to his exceptionalism, Rayner is seemingly picked at random, having greatness thrust upon him and being forced to deal with the heroic life out of nowhere. The result is that Mars made Rayner feel much more akin to Spider-Man, while Jordan had long felt like Superman. I had the most freedom to develop the new Green Lantern. DC just let me make up Kyle from scratch, revealed Mars. Kyle was definitely inspired by the everyman archetype. I wanted him to feel as real as possible so there would be that much more contrast between the trials that he faced as a person and the trials he faced as a hero. Mars went on to be the guiding force behind Green Lantern for the next decade, writing more than 100 issues of the series with Rayner always being front and center. His run would see highs, like the time travel story Emerald Knights, in which Rayner teamed up with a still heroic Jordan in the past, and lows, like the death of Alexandra DeWitt, which coined the term women in refrigerators and highlighted an unfortunate trend in comics. That's a subject for another time. Rayner's time in the spotlight helped keep Green Lantern prominent in DC Comics, but the fallen Hal Jordan was still seen as a broken character. Parallax soon became the villain behind the 1994 event Zero Hour, where he attempted to remake the DC universe. Jordan had gone completely insane, and his descent into villainy was complete. Readers were not happy. It was clear that Jordan needed to undergo an extensive character rehabilitation. DC Comics' solution? Kill him off. Parallax made one last heroic sacrifice to save the world in 1996's The Final Night, and the spirit of Jordan was soon bonded with the Spectre. God's spirit of vengeance during yet another event, 1999's Day of Judgment, as atonement for his sins. Even dead, Jordan was never far from the spotlight. It took 5 years for DC Comics to rehabilitate Jordan from Emerald Twilight's murderous rampage, and another 5 after that to bring him back as the heroic Green Lantern. That happened in 2004 with writer Geoff Johns' Green Lantern Rebirth, a miniseries that saw Jordan return to life after discovering that the Parallax persona was actually caused by him being possessed by the ancient embodiment of fear. Removing the blame for Emerald Twilight from Jordan and placing it on a monster meant that the hero could be absolved. It's an effective solution, but one that doesn't quite fit with how Jordan had been portrayed as Parallax. He's a crazed but guilt-ridden character, capable of evil but with enough good in him to save the world one last time. But this is comics. Sometimes you need to break a few things to put the pieces back together. Johns overhauled large swaths of Green Lantern mythos, reformed the Green Lantern Corps, and expanded the foundational ideas of the comic in order to bring Hal Jordan back. The massive shakeup of Emerald Twilight could only be brought to a close with yet another massive shakeup. That's 2 enormous, decade-long definitive runs on Green Lantern that all have their roots in Emerald Twilight. The more focused, grounded era of Ron Marz from 1994 through 2004, and the gigantic space opera era of Geoff Johns from 2004 through 2013. Not bad for a last-minute, desperate attempt at injecting fresh blood, unafraid to break what Green Lantern fans had held sacred for generations. Now decades removed, Emerald Twilight remains a controversial but compelling story of one hero's fall from grace. Its sharp, shocking edge softened by knowing that Hal Jordan would one day return as the hero we all know him to be.